All right, everyone. Welcome to the Start Smart panel discussion on career management. We have a fantastic panel for you today. My colleague Linda Alapin will introduce them in just a moment. My name is David Bradshaw. I'm the Assistant Director of the Graduate Center, a unit of the Graduate College, and co-host of the Start Smart Workshop series. Our other co-host is the AAUW Tucson chapter, which is led by President Linda Alapin. She will be our main master of ceremonies today. She's been with AAUW for a while now, and in particular, she received the Eleanor Roosevelt Fund Award for Contributions to Humanity in 2013. She's also served as the outreach coordinator in the past and is a longtime collaborator with making Start Smart available for the University of Arizona community and the community at large. She's also the founder and chair emeritus of the Global Women's Leadership Network, now part of what is known as How Women Lead, and co-author of the leadership program, You as a Global Leader. She's done a lot of amazing work in her illustrious career, and I could probably spend 30 minutes talking about it, but I will instead cede the floor to Linda and let her get started. I believe her LinkedIn link will be dropped in the chat should you like to learn more about her. So thank you so much for partnering with us, Linda. It's been a pleasure working with you and the other AAUW colleagues involved with this project.
Great. Thank you, David. And really, partnering with you and the Graduate Resource Center over the last few years, you and Joel, it's a pleasure really to work with somebody that is flexible and amenable and supportive. So I thank you too. And by the way, I'm joined today by Lakin Kearns. Lakin over here, she's the Lindsay Fellow, who the College of Education each year has generously given us someone to help us with things like Start Smart. So I'm really glad to have Lakin to support me too. So the panel today are all people that I now know a little bit. I only know a little bit about Dr. Pitts, but I am several years with other of the panelists. And I want to thank you all for being here. You know, this is a give back to the young people who are getting their degrees from the University of Arizona, primarily in this case, the PhD students. That's represents most of the people who signed up. I see a few of you who are back after last week's Start Smart session, so thank you for the confidence in coming back for this second session, and we hope that it again meets your expectations. So let me start with Angie Mays. Angie's she's the Vice President of Customer Success, which I think is a really interesting title, okay, at a place called Customer Success and Experience at an education company called ETQ in Tucson. She's been around a little over 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, Angie. Before that, she was in Colorado. She's really got a strong background in corporate training as well as strategic business. She has several degrees. She has a master in corporate training from Jones International University and another master's in human resources from Ottawa University. And she got her bachelor's degree there as well in business and healthcare. She's got experience in lots of different parts and operations of companies, and she was an officer or a senior leader in a company that was in all 50 states and generated $50 million a year in revenue. She's often part of seminars at Eller College. I've been on a couple of panels with her, and she's done Start Smart I can't say how many times, and I really appreciate your volunteering to do that, Angie. So what we're going to do is, as I introduce each one of the speakers, they're going to start by answering the first question that we have for them. And this question is, Andy, when you look back on your life and your career, what were one or two important factors that made a big difference in your success? So what were those contributions? What are those factors that you look back on and say, I was successful because of these couple of things? And we'll start there. So Angie, what's your answer to these two important factors?
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for having me here today. When I think of two factors that really led to my success, I think the first is being open to opportunity. Your career is a journey, right? You have a plan and it's going to twist and turn. And my success today is because I was open to those twists and turns. The second thing that I would say that really truly leads to my success is listening to that gut intuition. What are the things you really love? And what are the things and projects that you've worked on that is not ideal? That helps drive that journey. And I think when you do that and you're a part of a team and you really allow that to come together, it flourishes very quickly. And I think it not only ensures your success, but your happiness as well. And I think in the year of COVID being locked into our homes, that happiness factor is very critical in what we do. So those are the two things I would say: be open and allow the journey, and be honest with yourself of what you enjoy and those projects maybe that you don't, so that next step on the journey, you know what to steer away from.
Those are two very important factors. And I know you charted a great career through those open opportunities, Angie. So thanks for starting us off.
Absolutely.
Erin Montgomery is a friend and the Vice President of Human Resources for a very large nonprofit in California. In fact, I'm down on the peninsula in Silicon Valley. The name of that is Ability Path, and she'll tell you a little bit about that, I'm sure, at some point. She joined them 11 years ago. A lot of time has elapsed, right? And she switched from Silicon Valley tech startups, where everything is bottom line, and rapid into the world of nonprofits. She was looking for an opportunity to give back, and I know she's done that because Ability Path has a very, very successful track record. She's got 15 years of leadership experience in human resources, project management, all kinds of administration. And she earned a bachelor's degree from the University of California in Santa Cruz, which, if you've ever been there, is one of the most gorgeous campuses that exist. So anyway, Erin, what are two factors that you point to that made your career a success?
Thank you, Linda. Can you hear me? Great. Thank you for the introduction and for the opportunity to be here. So I am not in Arizona. I don't work in Arizona. My grandmother used to live there, so I would go and visit, but I am in California, and happy to bring this perspective of working out here and how to manage your career based on my own personal experience. When I was reviewing this question and reflecting, two things. And the first, I think, is very much on a personal level. And that is, I encourage all of you to explore at the personal level how to bring your authentic self to the workplace. And what does that mean for you in terms of bringing your whole self? What I've learned is that authenticity in what you bring, both either as an individual contributor or as a leader, really helps you to establish deep connections with people and relationships that can further ideas and innovation. And a lot of that has to do with communication and how you show up. And Linda's program that I brought to our organization really focused on that, and I've experienced a lot of learning through that process. And so, I encourage you to think about that, reflect on that, do some research, explore leadership programs to really understand what that means for you. And then second, I think it really relates to what Angie shared, has to do with making career choices that align with your personal values. So as Linda shared earlier, I used to work in the high-tech, for-profit, very different environment in the Silicon Valley. I don't regret it. I learned a lot. I gained a lot of skills that I have been able to transfer and bring to the nonprofit space, and I was very intentional about that. But I had an aha moment in a board meeting where I realized I don't think this is what I believe in. I can be my best self in giving back to my community. And so there was a change that I made in my career that took me to Ability Path, and I took a pay cut, and I intentionally made a career change knowing that I wanted to give back to my community and also have work that was very rewarding for me personally. So Ability Path is a nonprofit that serves individuals with developmental disabilities, and we support the lifespan of an individual and their families. We're education based. We have education programs, but we also have life skills and work programs for adults as well. So my family were educators, and I asked myself, what do I want to do and how do I want to give back? And I was able to find a career match that that checked that box for me, and that synergy brings happiness. And that was what Angie was talking about. That happiness will sustain you through stressful times, challenging times, and will continue to motivate you in your career.
Yeah. And, recently I know that you and the CEO of Ability Path have embarked on something that's very values-based, right? Which goes back, I think when Brian saw what was happening to George Floyd and thought about the depth of that problem, you and he have embarked on, really investigating diversity, equity, and inclusion to an extent that I don't know that many organizations have explored. So, Erin, I'm not sure that that's right down, that values path that you talked about before.
100%. So inclusion is one of our core values for our organization. And with recent events and what is happening in our country, we asked ourselves and examined, what does that mean for us? And we made a commitment to invest in diversity and equity and inclusion and work with outside consultants. And we've actually brought it in-house, and it's been transformational. It's been transformational for me personally, but for the organization and for those that work for us and those that we serve. And it's a journey, and we're, as I said, very committed to it. And I do think that as an example of how being adaptable and open to new opportunities, as Angie mentioned, is really important. And that may mean that you actually need to change yourself. So adaptability is really, really important. And again, it goes back to your core values.
Great. So then there's Francisca Villegas Bracker. Francisca is the director of the Women's Business Center for the YWCA of Southern Arizona. And I've worked with Francisca a couple of times on Start Smart in Spanish. Now, I was not the leader. Okay, but we did make it happen, and it was, I think, transformational for the people who went through it. But Francisca, she's an experienced executive director. She's got a demonstrated history, believe it or not, in the banking industry. Okay, so here is someone we have a high-tech nonprofit, we have a banking person. You're still involved in banking, I believe, Francisca, in some way, shape, or form, and also, giving back to the community. She's got all kinds of human resources background, as well as a couple of different degrees from the University of Arizona. She is a wildcat. I know that she is a wildcat out there. And I don't know how you do this with a couple of kids, a full-time job at Women's Business Center. You also are active in the Tucson community, on the grant review committee, at the Women's Foundation, and also the co-chair of Pima County Bond Committee. So thank you for all that you give back to the community, Francisca. And what are the factors that have led to your success?
Thank you for the warm introduction. And I do need to update my LinkedIn. So being 5 years old, you did very good. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. I guess I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting. And one of the things that I did, I was working as a financial planner. I was working for the Arizona Department of Revenue, because it's in my heart to help women that look like me or are, immigrants, to really advance, right? To be financially stable. So I realized I was doing it from the wrong organization, because working for the Arizona Department, it was stressful, very stressful, and then financial planning as well. So then I realized, okay, what do I want to do, right? So one of the things that I did, I started identifying, what do I want to do, right? So then I want to help. I want to help women. That was clear to me 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Okay, so I ask for opportunities, right? I want to, where's the money? Because I'm always like, where are the resources, right? So I realized, okay, so let's volunteer to be a grant, read grants. How did the grant review committee? Okay, so that's the PIMA, that's the city. Who has the resources to help women? So I asked to be a volunteer. I created my own nonprofit to help small businesses because, believe it or not, there's so many businesses out there that could benefit from our expertise, right? We had the opportunity to go to higher education. So let's empower those that don't have the opportunity. So I asked for to be part of those committees. I asked for help. I asked to be a volunteer. And that's how I created my next move, right? I created my own nonprofit. Then the right opportunity came. I mean, not when you create your own nonprofit, the resources are very limited. But then I was invited to be part of the Women's Business Center, and the resources came to me, right? Because my work was proven, the work with the community. So don't be afraid to ask. Do what you like to do, because I always tell my business owners, the women that I help, if you find passion, if you like what you do, don't worry about the money. Don't worry about they will come, those resources, but make sure your heart is in the right space. Make sure you're doing what you like, and make sure you are planning what your next move is. Because if you just waiting, I mean, yeah, you might get lucky, but you create those opportunities for you, and be brave and bold enough to ask to be at that table, to ask for an opportunity, and the rest, it will fall into place.
Wow. We've had our first Latina mayor in Tucson. Do I see another candidate in the wings?
I have to give Regina, she's a good friend of mine. We've been working together, advancing the small businesses. And I appreciate so much that every time an opportunity to help and advance women, she's always reaching out to us. We just deployed $9.5 million to help underserved, low income people of color communities, and that was done through the Women's Business Center. So we like to walk the talk. So when we say we want to be a resource to the community, you be a resource, and then the rest is going to fall into place. But make sure you're measuring, how does that look like, especially with new grads? What do I want to do in the next 5 years? Then you start measuring. That's kind of what I did. What do I want to do? What I want to help women? How did that look like, right? Then you start identifying those opportunities, and then you're like, okay, how do I want to do that? The how is very important, right? Well, resources are crucial. I'm like, okay, so I want to deploy resources. And then you start making calls and you start asking for those resources, right, to help other women. So yeah, $9.5 million through the support of the mayor were amazing. And it was, I think we deployed more than 1,800 grants.
Wow. It's a good thing that she's such a good friend of yours, Francisca. But it is wonderful that she has, government can't do all the deployment. So it's wonderful that she has a place to put those resources that they really make a difference. Maggie, it's Dr. Margaret Pitts. I'll start off with that. And she is joining us from the Graduate College, as well as from she's an assistant professor in communications. So she's assistant dean over in the Graduate Center and an assistant professor, and she has kids too. I understand they're taking music lessons on the internet. So we may get interrupted here. We're not sure. And if you hear an oboe in the background, you'll know that that's where it's coming from. She really oversees a lot of things having to do with the graduate programs, from development to policies and procedures and admissions and academic progress. She's an advocate. I'm sure that there are many students who have appreciated her advocacy for them over time. She loves to promote diversity, integrity, and interdisciplinary Okay, I knew I wouldn't get it. Interdisciplinarity. Okay, there's a very a multi-symbol word. She's also doing research in the areas of interpersonal and intercultural communications. And she studies it from the aspect of human interactions for positive social, using a positive social scientific lens. Now that's pretty complicated. So I'm going to, however, let her go back to answering the question. What have been a couple of important success factors in your career?
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel always so lucky to find community, especially with other women. And this is a new opportunity for me to just continue to make it a network of support. And in thinking about the question posed to us, I think one of the things that I've been able to capitalize on is creating a network of support across different facets of a local community, but also, as you said, Linda, with these interdisciplinary and international and intercultural connections, that it has been my longtime sort of goal and passion to make human connections with people because they're passionate about what they do. And when you're inspired by others because of the work they do, it also, I think, lights a fire inside of you. It's very attractive. And so finding people who are sort of glowing in that way, allows you to sort of attract to one another. And I think create the types of supportive networks that are not only fulfilling and rewarding as a human, as an individual, but also in the jobs and in the roles and professions that we take on. So I think my first answer to the question is really about creating a network of support. And I don't know that I love the word networking, but I do like the idea of a net where each person is sort of holding hands or tied with another individual. And that creates a foundation of support that I think is so very important. And I agree with what my co-panelists have said. I thought one important thing for me is always following my own internal compass and being open to listening and influence of others around me to help shape that compass, but not to ever sort of close my compass. And I didn't always take the path that somebody recommended to me, but I did always take the path that I knew was authentic for me, for better or for worse, which sometimes means it's a hard path, but I am not afraid to fail. It's uncomfortable. But I really value this idea of small moments of courage and bravery that we do through talk and through action with one another, and recognizing that when we make ourselves vulnerable to failure or vulnerable to criticism, that we also make ourselves open to growth producing moments. And so I think some of the things that really resonated with me that, my co-panelists have already said are things like bringing your authentic self. When I think things like this, I can tell, when I talk to Joel and I talk to David, okay, but it's only going to be Maggie who shows up because I can't really be anybody else. It's too hard for me to do that. That authentic self is who I bring to every game. And I try to connect with individuals at that level. And for me, to the question of what is sort of positive social science, that has really directed the research that I do currently, but also my approach to leadership and to influence, which is to identify values and assets in myself and in the people who are around me, and to say, what can we look at that's happening here that's going pretty well? Can we make it better? How can we take stock of the things that are really our excellent traits, our character traits, and our virtues, and to accelerate those and to provide foundation to launch that, so that we can provide a virtuous pathway forward for ourselves, and by doing so for those around us.
All right, thank you.
And I'll close there.
Okay. I have to second the network around the world. You never know where a network will lead you. So I led a program in California called Women Leaders for the World. I was a founder of the organization that sponsored it. And over the years, 14 years, I met people from all over the world, mostly developing countries. And as Erin knows, they're now the foundation for my book that I'm writing. So you never know where your network will take you. Okay. And I have to say that the thing that surprised me about all the interviews and things that I've done with these women is that ultimately I could say that every single one of them inspires me. Right? Every single one of them and their stories are, you know, courageous and overcoming difficulties and all of those things. And they're so inspirational. And I think that that's a lot of the positive social science. There I got back to it somehow. All right. So let's move on. And in this case, what I'm going to do is say, okay, who wants to answer? And not everybody has to answer all the questions. And particularly, Maggie, you have some from the academic sphere, which we'll ask you. Some of these come from the students. Some of them are made up by us. And we'll ask, by the way, for you to ask questions as we go along. So don't be shy. Put them in the chat or send them to Joel, and he'll introduce them. So tell us about a turning point in your career and what you learned from it. It could be a positive experience, it could be a negative experience, but what's a turning point in your career? Because every single one of the young people who are with us today or listening to the recording later will have turning points in their career. You couldn't, you won't go forward without them. So what's turning point? And all of you can answer. So just, who wants to start?
I can start.
All right.
Okay, so out of college, I sold medical equipment and I loved it. I thought this is so fabulous, and I never thought of myself ever as a salesperson. I remember when they first offered it to me, I turned it down. I was like, because I thought of a negative connotation, right? But then I really thrived in it, because I think when you listen to people and you're helping people, no one wakes up and thinks, ooh, I want medical equipment, right? They need it. And what's most critical is taking care of patients and really solving their needs in the best possible way. And unfortunately, back in long ago, we shall just say, many, many years ago, there was some issues in the medical sales industry, and I lost my job. And I was heartbroken. I thought, what in the world am I going to do? And, is the world coming to an end? Was my 2-second thought. And then I thought, I got to get going on the next chapter here. And so since my undergrad was in business and healthcare management, I was eligible for a program, a really advanced 9-month program to do another degree, but I couldn't work. And I'll tell you what, the first day I stained the deck. The second day I did all this, and the third day my husband said, you got to do something else. This isn't going to work. And so I went down the street to find a job, just to keep myself busy until I was accepted into this program, because I knew I was going to be accepted. I'm a hard worker and I will find a way. And I just put it out there. I'm going to get accepted, even though it was limited students. I was brought into this company and I interviewed. I looked for just entry level, was very transparent in what had happened, how much money I made, what I'm going to do. And I was starting this program. It was a nursing program. And they brought me back for 4 interviews. And I thought, what in the world? Why am I doing all this for really an entry level job to keep me busy? And little did I know that they had brought in all the district managers to interview me. And they offered me a senior leadership position in something I never in a million years would have thought I would be doing. And they paid for my master's degree in HR. So that was situational, right? And I was completely transparent, lost my job. I'm going to do it in this nursing program. And they kept asking me questions. And look then what it brought in my career. Again, that, transition. And I'm so thankful for both of those careers, because it's allowed me to be a successful leader in who I am today.
Well, Angie, I think that, there's a lot to be said for your belief in yourself. And, and I really, you have to have a belief in yourself, and you have a very strong belief in yourself. So you knew you were going to get accepted and you were going to find something, and after COVID, I think we can all understand a few days with just the husband or whatever, no work to do, right? So,
Yeah.
we could drive each other nuts. as the case might be. But, really, I also say, that turning point in your career, yes, it was situational. And yes, I'm sure it was tragic at the time, but it's your belief in yourself.
Yeah.
That really,
So thankful for it, right? Because it really did shift. But I can tell you, I've done sales right out of college. I fell into HR, literally, right? So I declined my opportunity in the nursing program because I thought it was meant to be. I did that. And then a university called me to build a program for them. I did that. And then when I moved to Tucson, I now work for a software company. I have no idea what the next chapter will be, but the foundation for me is building teams and helping people develop and take their career to the next level, right? Projects come and go. I've migrated systems, changed things out, gone to market. What really wakes me up and gets me excited every day is my team. So.
yeah. And who else? Erin, are you up? You're up.
I just want to add, because I think the story I was going to tell is very similar to what Angie shared. And I think it's just something that you have to expect, that whatever path you set out for yourself, it will have twists and it will have turns, and there will be unexpected events that you don't have control over. And I think that finding opportunity in those challenges can really make a difference in your career path. So I was working in, as Linda mentioned, in Silicon Valley and in software and startups, and I was happy and we were doing some great things. We got acquired and I got laid off, and I was devastated, and I was crushed. I felt like I don't know what I'm going to do. There was a lot of uncertainty, and I had to reach deep down inside and say, okay, Erin, you can do this, right? And I shifted my mindset, and I actually learned a lot by helping that organization be acquired. So I stayed until the bitter end. I could have walked. I said, no, I'm actually going to sit this out. I care about this organization. I'm going to learn about this, which I did. I learned a lot through that experience. And then I went out and I found another job. And that job ended up opening up all these opportunities for me. It was with another software company that was affiliated with Stanford. And I learned so much, and it was a great trajectory for me in terms of my career. And I think that experience helped me then to make that intentional decision about making a career change for myself that I shared earlier, where I actually said, you know what, I don't want to work for this industry anymore. I want to do something different. And when I made that change, I really told myself, you know what, it's okay to close a door because another door will open. And I believe in that. And so, and I always counsel people in HR, and we always, in our organization, we welcome people. If this is not for you, we will support you to find what is, right? I firmly believe that everyone can make changes, and there will be different chapters in your career. And each chapter, you will learn something about yourself, you will gain new skills, and it will allow you to do something new in the future. And no career path is the right path. You need to discover what that is for yourself, and also know that within discovery of that path, there will be some challenges, and you learning how to overcome those challenges will make you a stronger person, and you have a more clearer vision about who you are and what you want. So very much, sort of adding to Angie's story, and just wanted to share that personally.
And, and part of it is resilience. And we've all had to learn resilience in these COVID times, whether it be changes in how we deliver conferences or, how we work with, my daughter has twins who are 6 years old, and everybody was in the house trying to do everything, Some of you may have experienced a few of those things, but resilience, it's a really important quality. And so far, you'll notice that we really haven't talked about, the skills that you're acquiring, for instance, through your studies at the University of Arizona. We're talking about a lot of personal things that make for a great career. Okay, and careers are not, oh, I'm going to go there, and that happens. I mean, I think it used to be. I think when our fathers, mothers, maybe for you, your grandparents were they could go to work for a company and they could stay their entire life. And that just isn't the way that it is today. It really isn't. So Any other turning points? Anybody want to chip in? Francisca?
Linda, I can add to that. So I remember when I first got hired for this position, in my mind, I knew what the future looked like, what direction I wanted to take the center and the women. I mean, last year we helped 850 women start a business and provided technical assistance. So we touch a lot of lives, right? So it's impossible what my success looked like to organize 850 women to look like that for them as well. So it was the first year, the first couple of months, I had a really hard time adjusting because in my mind, I had an idea what success looked like for my center. And oh boy, I I learned so much because I'm like, well, you need to be innovative. You need to be creating this, you know, super cool high. And it was not like that. So I was having a hard time. And I was like, okay, how can I make this work? But there's this, I think it's Stephen Covey that says, seek to understand before you're understood, something like that. I'm horrible, but I needed to understand what the community needed, what success was like for them, right? So it took me a couple of months and then I realized it's not my success. I'm here to facilitate what they need. Whatever they need, I need to be listening. And I'm a good listener, but I'm like, no, but you can do better, right? Setting expectations on them. And it was the opposite. I needed to understand what they needed and facilitated, you know, that. So long story short, I took the time, I reassessed the programs, I did, you know, learned what the community needed and what success is like, because it's not this lenient, like you're going to be very successful, business is going to succeed. No, you need to think about what you need and you need to facilitate. That's our role, basically. Long story short, last year we were nominated. It's hard for me to say I was, but we were nominated Women's Business Center of the Small Business Administration, and this is a national recognition. So I was like, oh, I'm doing something good. And I invited the community. So we had a few people because of COVID. They were part of the success. And I had to do a short speech. And I said, this isn't about me. It took a while to understand what the community needs. So it's a turning point when you start understanding that it's not what you think success looks like, but it's about the work you do and how do you fit in and how you complement the work that you're doing, or even with your family. It you know, applies with everything. What is it that, how do you come in, how you fit in? And then it felt like I'm doing something good. Even the SBA recognized my Women's Business Center. So that was a turning point for me.
And Francisca, you know, I admired you so much when you first got the job as the head of the Women's Business Center. And the reason that I say that is your predecessor had an office in the Central Y there off of 10, okay? And, you know, we went to meet and you tell me that you're down in South Tucson. You're right in the community.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, I had a lot of respect for you just for being there because you, through that, learned what they really needed. And I, you know, and I know that Angie and Aaron and Maggie's out there with the graduate students, and Aaron is out there with the people with disabilities, and Angie is out there with the customers. You know, that it's so important, you know, but I just have to say that was one of the things I thought, wow, this person is there for those people. So.
Thank you.
Maggie, do you have anything answer to that one, or shall we give you one of your wonderful academic questions to start with? You tell me.
I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. I'm in a transition that's sparked by a turning point in my own career, and so you know, I think it's really fascinating. I've tried to be really reflective about that, and you know, it's a process of letting go of some things, letting go part of my faculty role and working directly with my own PhD students. and then recognizing that while I can still influence my own PhD students, now I can do it at such a broader level and have an impact on the trajectory and hopefully this idea of thriving instead of surviving graduate school. So I've had to really transition from myself and my team and the success of my students and academic success in that way to thinking about what does it look like? What does it look like for 8,000 students as compared to 2? And how can I take a step back to let my own students, I have my own theories and research that I've been working on for a long time, and it's very important to me. And I'm in a position now where I can allow my own PhD students to take over. And I think it's gonna, I hope my research flourishes and takes on shape, but I've had to let that go to allow others to do that. And I think I get that sense, with the rest of you, that idea that really it is our teams that allow that to happen. And that resilience is a skill set. It is not just something that happens to us through adversity, but it's a translatable skill set, because I know I've had this adversity, these challenges earlier in my personal life, in my career, in my parenting life. And as I've learned to move from one moment to another, I can bring those skills and that knowledge with me into each of these different contexts. And that's really part of that skill building that we have. And I think that mindful awareness that, I overcame something hard and I grew from it. And to keep that growth mindset, I think, is really, really important. And that allows you to not fall down at a turning point, but to use it as a trampoline to really bounce off of it, that, ooh, gosh, this is my transition. This is a turning point. Linda, if you have these wonderful international experiences, I always equate it to my culture shock, and then that growth that comes out of that. If you didn't go through the culture shock, you would never grow as an intercultural other and never make that connection through language and through community with others. And so you've got to embrace the difficulties of these turning points, or a bottom of a U-shaped curve of transition, because the only way to go from there is up, and that is a growthful up. I think that's what it is to be a human and experience that roller coaster of life. So the turning points are what makes it worth it, because we're critically aware of change at those moments.
And I hadn't thought about transitions, but transitions are very, very important. Okay. Angie, did you have something to add?
I was going to say, the other thing that I really am glad that I've really paused throughout my career and thought too is reflecting on those ups and the downs and the turning points, and most critically, helping others through it. When you have learned through challenge, help prevent that for others around you, right? When you've seen it and gone through it, you really can then take it to the next level with others and influencing them. And I think that will be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I think we often think about, helping the younger generation, but we tend to do it, I'll say, when we're on the bright side. Okay, but there are dark moments, and you will have dark moments in your careers and life. And it's when another woman or man, reaches down and really helps you through that, through that time and through the transition. That I think is really, really important. And I think everybody that's here on the panel is a mentor to many other people. So it's so important. I do want to get one. Go ahead.
Be willing to ask questions when you feel you're getting to that maybe negative spot or the concern. Reach out. Going back to Maggie's point earlier about the net, wherever you're connected, don't feel like you have to wait until you get the bottom. When you start getting that uncomfortable feeling, you know, that's when you should be reaching out to anyone that you trust to have that conversation, really bounce ideas off of people. You know, I always say that I'm in the bubble of trust. Let's have the real truth, right? Let's have that conversation. And it's important along your road, no matter where it takes you, is knowing that you have those people that you can count on to have those candid conversations.
Yeah.
Linda, if I can just add the same thing, we run orientation for women that want to start their own business really quickly every other week. And one of the things that we run an exercise where they have to learn if the business idea is feasible, if it's viable. And some of them you can see they're very uncomfortable. And if you're not making mistakes, I tell them the same thing. You're not learning. You're not going to grow your business. If you want, you have to start, right? Somewhere. Start today. 2, if you expect perfection, you're in the wrong, because nothing is perfect. And if you want to avoid mistakes, you will. And in fact, the more mistakes you make, the faster you're going to learn. The faster you fail, the faster your business is going to succeed. So I just want to share that with the group.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's a Silicon Valley attitude. Francisca, you know, it really is fail fast, because the one thing we can't buy is time, right? And our careers will not be perfect. None of us on here were our careers perfect, nor will they continue to be. But, you know, you've got to start somewhere, and, you know, you'll be resilient. That's Maggie. Before, I know you sent me a bunch of resources for people who are looking for guidance in human resources. I mean, in academic kinds of resources. And Lakin has all of those. And what she's going to do is put them in the chat. So also, all of you probably know that you can save the chat. So once she gets all of those resources out there, you want to say just a couple words about the resources that she's going to put in the chat?
I was trying to anticipate some of the questions that our audience members might have, and I know we had some of those in advance. And so now I remember what I sent. To me, especially those of you graduate students now can take advantage of the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. They have sessions for graduate students. The University of Arizona has an affiliation with the program, so we have access to all the resources that they have. And it was sort of a moment of humility for me in my career when I paid to take a boot camp with the NCFDD to help me become more aware of, I think, some of my choices and opportunities, and to build a new network of support that was outside of this university. It was important to me to be able to say to somebody, gosh, I think that wasn't the best thing I ever did, and not to say that to a colleague. And so that I would recommend for any graduate student for now, for making it to creating success plans, making SMART goals, really moving from the idea of surviving to thriving as you complete your graduate trajectory. And this is also a space that really is a lifespan approach to mentoring across an academic career, that it is helpful for graduate students, but early, mid, and late career academics as well. I know that many of you might choose to pursue an academic career after your degree, but also the world is wide open for excellent thinkers, critical thinkers, compassionate others to make a change in your community through your career. And I think this is really important for both master's students as well as doctoral students to have that recognition that we need you in the field to make the difference that you can make. And so I put, we've got the graduate center career support with Dr. Morocco. He helps all graduate students, but especially PhD students that are interested in creating a non-academic career, to reach out as well to the Tucson Young Professionals Group for networking, to the Graduate and Professional Student Council for networking. And for those of you, I know there were a few questions in there maybe about, gee, well, how do I find, a career path for me in academia? You probably already know this, but in case you don't, reading the Chronicle of Higher Education is very helpful to see what is happening in the world of higher education, but also what jobs are available. So those are some resources that I thought of that might come in handy. But I'm really happy to answer any questions, and I see there's a few questions that came in there as well, about what an academic path looks like.
Yeah, well, why did you choose? They're asking you, why did you pursue academia instead of an industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's a weird pathway how you get where you are, really. I wanted to be a writer. I love to write. If I could do that all the time, that's what I want to do. But I realized that I needed to write about something, and that's where the research came in. I wasn't going to be a creative writer or I wasn't, fictional writer. It wasn't there for me. So I pursued research and ethnographic research in particular. I was in the field. I did my dissertation in Paris to study intercultural transitions over long periods of time and how people manage that through types of talk. And so I just kept pursuing my interest in learning about people and their interactions with one another, and being able to write about it in ways that then made pathways open for others pursuing things like a study abroad, or my research really centers on decision making across the lifespan, and really looking at these turning points as opportunities to communicate in ways that facilitate a successful transition. So for me, I just felt really comfortable in higher education. But I will say this: when I was up for tenure and promotion, it never bothered me, because I knew two things. I knew, first of all, if I didn't get tenured at the University of Arizona, they shouldn't have hired me, because I'm not the right person for them. That I knew my work was solid and I knew it was good. So if I wasn't tenured, a mistake made and it wasn't mine. But I also knew that if I didn't earn tenure, there were 1,000 other things that I was ready to be. I was ready to work in hospice care. I thought I could, have my own flower shop and bookstore. There were so many ideas that I knew I would be successful at, that it never bothered me to think I might fail at this. And so I keep taking a step up on a cloud or into the air, and I never know if I'm going to fall off the ledge, like I did stepping into the position of associate dean. But I trusted my gut, and I trusted people around me who said, you've got something that makes sense in that environment, and we want you there. And I didn't know, but I took the leap, and my network of support has always been there to hold it, for me. So it's that balance of risk and confidence, a little craziness too. That's probably part of it.
It doesn't hurt to be crazy, I did an early internet startup just as CEO, and raising all the money and all of that, that was crazy, really. I even tried to do a live demo, and the next person speaking at the conference was from Microsoft, and he said, I wouldn't try to do this cross town on the internet. The internet's not stable enough to do a live demo yet. And it was like, I didn't know. Make it a leap of faith, as the case might be. Yeah, it's very important. I'm going to combine a couple of questions, okay, so that we can get as much information in as we can. So we're talking about early career management, okay, and some concrete tips on how you can manage the first few years of your career. How can you manage that so that it sets you up for success? So this is really about early career management, not the theory of early career management, but the reality of tips that these people can use to set them on the right path. So a couple of concrete steps that they can adopt. And it's anybody.
I'll start it off. I think these aren't really new ideas, so but I'll share. I think, and this may not be answering your question exactly how you want me to answer it, but this is what came to mind for me. Informational interviews and engaging with professionals in the field that you're interested in to learn more about what is expected, how to navigate the systems, and just ask questions and ask questions and ask questions. And there are no right questions or wrong questions. I've found that individuals who may be uncertain and have multiple paths that are interested in, like, it's hard to make a choice, right? And you don't, in that bold move, it's hard because you're being pulled in different directions. And the best resource for you are people who are working in those fields, and ask them, what do you like about what your job is? What do you don't like, right? It's really important because not every, every job has its plus side and its minus side, right? There's going to be challenges, things you don't like about your job, but it's really important to understand what those things are. And it may be different for different people, but just to get that perspective. I don't know exactly how it fits into your, everybody who's on the panel, but internships, I think the idea of trying things on really helps too. You may think, yeah, I want to be this, I want to do this in my career. And then you go there. I don't know how many times this happens for people, and they go and they're 6 months, a year in, they're like, I don't like this. I thought I would like this. And that's okay, right? I think it's okay to acknowledge that for yourself. So try things on. And then I think if you can engage with the mentor, and I think this came up in what Maggie was talking about, it is so key. And not just one mentor, there could be multiple mentors, and really taking the initiative for yourself to develop that and drive that relationship, right? So asking yourself as a mentee, what do I want to get out of this? And again, ask questions and leverage those relationships that you have with mentees can really help you to discover for yourself what it is that you like, what's working for you, what opportunities are out there for you. Mentees can really help to shape your thinking around your career path.
That's right. Erin, I second the motion on your informational interview. So it's not an interview for a specific job, but it's an informational interview. And I can tell you, I used to do a lot of those when I was in the tech industry. And if I really thought this was a high potential kind of person, I would look around the company to see if there was some place, right? Even though that wasn't the intent of the reason that he or she came, to talk with me, I would try to find a place that maybe they could interview for and see if that would help. Because, companies is all about talent. And the higher potential you have, the greater, because then the company will grow with the people will help grow it. So.
And the last comment I want to make is that, well, I don't want to be absolute about this, but from personal experience, you don't know how to get the job. You don't know how to do the job when you get the job. You get the job and then you learn how to do the job. So I think don't limit yourself in your thinking of your own skill set, capacity, and following your passion. Many people who are successful in their careers, they got a lucky break, or someone saw something within them and they showed up and said, you know what, I can do this with confidence. So don't be afraid to stretch yourselves and know that you're going to learn on the job, and that's going to be part of your process.
Yeah, and jobs change too, right? Over time, it's not exactly the same things that you'd be doing as departments change and that sort of thing. So, give it a try and, follow a lot of the things about companies with your same values and what do you really want to do. And Angie, your hand's up. I could see.
It is. So I wanted to add something to Erin because I'm with her on the whole mentor process. My piece of advice is when you are looking for mentors, generally we tend to go towards people that are like us, and what that's great. But I highly recommend that you find those that are aligned in your personality and approach, and then the opposite. And when you really select both, it will bring the best out of you. So don't fall into that comfort of just personality types and academic backgrounds or work backgrounds. Really look at both sides of that table.
Great. There are a couple of questions that I'm one that I'm going to call the elephant in the room. Okay, and it didn't appear in any of the student requests, but I think it's a question that many women have particularly. And Martin, you'll excuse me for asking this question, but it'll be important to you in terms of who you marry ultimately. Okay, but the question is, okay, what about kids and careers? How do I make the decision whether or not? I think it's unfortunate that many women have to think about whether or not they want to have kids and how it affects their career, because I don't believe that men think about it quite as much. Okay, but we do. And so, we're talking about, let's see, Angie's the only, Angie, you don't have a child, right? No, she's this, maybe she can still chime in, because obviously she made the decision in a different way than the rest of us did. So what about the choice? How do you go about thinking about that?
Linda, since I have the oldest, I'm sure I have a 22-year-old. I can share that, and I might sound cold, but it's okay if I'm cold. Treat it like a business. So if you are going to work, you need to, your spouse and it's like you're running a little business. So if you're staying home, you're not contributing to your retirement. You're not contributing to, to your exit strategy, right? So it's very important that some things they have to be in place before, if you're going to have a family. Is it the right age? What is your spouse contributing, right, to offset, just like a business, that, you're staying home, you're losing money, you're losing a retirement. Plus, if you invested in education, you're basically in the red because you spend all this money getting a degree, right? So think about and be creative. I know we have talent. So if you decide to stay home or to do something, you can always run a little business on the side. You can use your talent. I see a lot of women that are staying with the pandemic. We saw so many businesses models that didn't exist because you were forced to stay home, right? But you weren't just home doing nothing. Think about ways of diversifying your income. Where can money come in? You can be doing something on the weekends. You can doing research. Whatever you have to do, if you are going to be a volunteer, what opportunities will be available to you? It's okay to volunteer at church because you like that. That's where your heart is. But think about those opportunities are going to advance your career in case you go back to work.
Yeah.
Or in case your kids are ready to go to school, then you have that experience. You were volunteering, you were doing something, you created a business. Whatever that might look like, there are resources available so that you're not just home raising the kids. Yes, it's valuable. I'm not undermining that, but you have to think about the long term.
Yeah. Maggie, my understanding from having a number of Lindsay Fellows work with me that were going for PhDs, it might be that academia discourages PhD candidates from having kids. Now, I mean, I know this is an official statement by you, okay? But you had kids, I think, while you were getting your PhD or very shortly afterwards. What's it about? What's the decision there, and what really are the?
So thank you, but I had my kids quite late. Yeah, this is tough, and I think it's a really important conversation because of a few things. Parenting, making that decision, I don't really want to touch that. I think that I hope that everybody gets to make a mindful decision about that, and that what they want is what happens, and that you're able to create that life that you desire. I do have a stay-at-home husband. We've made the choice, and I was only a faculty member up until about a year and a half ago. And as a woman in a career choice that does not make a lot of money, but I should have talked to Francisca so that I had these good ideas, but I didn't. But it costs a lot of money to put your kid in daycare and all of that, and so we made the decision that my husband would stay at home with the children, and it is hard. And we try to raise them, you know, with our values of feminist values and values of equality. And you know, it's hard. It's hard for my husband to not be, you know, in the norm for him either. But we're very passionate about this. The thing that I would say is that it is important for women to stand up for men and women in parenting choices. And so you know, when I was pregnant, it was told to me, well, you can come back to the classroom, you can come back to what you're doing within 2 weeks. That's what my wife did. There's a lot of, you know, sort of pressure there. And I had to really think, okay, yes, I knew I could do that. But I also had to think, is it for the best of my family and for the best of other women to do that when I know it's not the right thing for me to do? So I made my choice, and I made my choice transparent to others, that I am choosing to have my full maternity leave. I always advocate for paternity leave, for parenting leave, and for people to make that choice out loud, because it paves the way for others. When I was given the opportunity to reset my tenure clock, for example, if you have a baby, you can push your tenure clock a year away, so I can have an additional year. Did I need it? I might not have, but I knew that other women might, and I did not want to not take my tenure leave because I didn't want it to change what other women would have. So, you know, I made choices about, you know, am I going to nurse my child? Am I not? You know, these kinds of things were all I'm a very private person. I mean, it embarrasses me now to talk about it, but I think it's important, because if we don't talk about it, then other women and men do not know how to manage it in the workplace. So, do I think that women and families can have children, you know, as their PhD students? Absolutely. You know, are they going to be discouraged from certain programs and from their faculty advisor? Yep, that's going to happen too. Not me. If you're my student, I'm going to say, okay, let's have the baby shower, and let's make the smart plan for how you're going to now rearrange your goals and your goal setting. And I think that is good. That is good mentoring, and that's the type of modeling that I want to inspire, so that you know, families happen, life happens. There are all kinds of decisions that people need to make in graduate school: to get married, to get divorced, to take care of parents, to adopt children, to have children. These are happening in the life course of everybody's life. And we need that support to be able to create better families, better communities, better systems of support, so that people are not doing it on their own. So while I think it's a partnered decision that I hope is made, you know, thoughtfully, and it's hard. My decision was, don't make a decision, because can the planet handle another birth? You know, these resources. Is this a safe place? And then the message that I got from somebody who is not a sentimental person, and his name is also known as my dad, said, this planet always has room for another person to love. And that was a profound message to me, that said, okay, I have room to love somebody, and I can support somebody. But I tried to be very transparent about my decision making, to make it easy, not only for me, or maybe to push a path. It wasn't easy, but to maybe push a path forward so that other families might benefit from some of the overt conversations that I have. If it's time for you to have babies, have babies.
Well,
but love them.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you are very good at supporting the students. I think it's wise to talk about, it is a couple's choice, right? It isn't just your choice. I've been married twice. The second one will be 40 years in 2 weeks. The first one, we agreed we didn't want to have kids. And I had a very successful career, and he left me saying he didn't want to be married to a vice president. Okay, so that was a real shocker. And eventually, though, being married, I had 3 kids, and I had 3 kids in 5 years from the age of 35 to 40. Okay, so it's not, that I would call, I must have known something about sequencing my career. But it was definitely a choice I would never give up. I mean, I was sitting there one day with the one in my arms, and someone called and said that I wasn't getting the job that I wanted in the company. And I said, I wouldn't trade. I definitely would not trade. Okay, so if it's right, it'll be right. And that's it's sort of where things go. Erin, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to, I really appreciate Maggie being, I would say, a champion and somebody who's paving space and paths for this to be more of a dialogue in the workspace. I think historically this has been an equity issue for women, and it's been challenging. And I think that there's been this societal judgment that it's either right or wrong, and there's a right or wrong time, and there is not a right or wrong time, and it is your personal decision. And you can work and full time and be a mom. It's hard. I'm not going to joke. It's not hard. I did it, and my career was important to me, but it was also out of necessity, and where I was living, and both my partner at that time and who is now, and we both worked, and we raised our 2 kids, and we had to be really creative. And there were moments when I doubted myself, and I wondered, did I make the right decision? And, I think that, you have to believe in yourself and know that, you having a career actually teaches your children and your daughters that is a path for them too, right? So I think it's important. I look at our daughter, and I think she learned a lot by seeing me work and talk about my work and my passion for my work and the impact I was making. And she is really successful right now in her career path. And not to say that that's because of me, but I think having a model to be able to see yourself in that space is really important. But I think it's also okay for a woman or a man, right? Because there's lots of different families. And I also want to call that out, right? It's not the traditional family is not the family of the future. And, the workplace is catching up to that and is having to make some adjustments. I do think that it's interesting, if you've seen the statistics coming out of COVID, that, this COVID has really impacted women in the workplace. And so, there's going to have to be some changes made, coming out of this to continue to support women in the workforce. We're important. And I really encourage everyone to, know that it is your personal choice, and there are resources out there. It may be challenging, but you can do it.
I'd like everybody, I think we want to open up for a few live questions. Okay. So first of all, I would ask the rest of you who aren't showing your faces to us, because as a professor, I used to love to see the faces, and now on Zoom, it's the same way. Thank you, Martin and Chen and Michaela and Tani, I hope are there. Okay, so we'll entertain a couple of questions from the floor, and you can ask a specific person if that's what you want or not. And if not, then Lakin, there's another resource. Somebody had asked about how do I get a fair salary being a woman and going into business. Okay, so first of all, last week we had this very same session. So there's a PowerPoint that David has available on the GRC site. And there's also a wonderful free online course. So Lakin's putting those up in the chat. Okay, so we got that one out of the way. So questions from the floor. Putting you on the spot. There, you must have a question. Okay, if not, I'll find one on here. I'll wait another second.
I threw one in the chat. And for those of you that can't see me, this is David Bradshaw from the Grad Center. It's a related question to the one that was just asked. And it's, does being transparent about your goals and decision-making make it easier to negotiate expectations for the position you are in? And so what I mean by that is, if you're managing your career, does being transparent about those goals and, what's factoring into how you're making decisions, does that make it easier for you to actually negotiate those revised expectations when you need that or what have you?
Angie?
I think not only does it allow you to negotiate, but it allows it to come to fruition. If you're not open about the change, right? So I think there's, when I look at my team, I have strong contributors, I have high potential folks, and different times in our lives that changes, right? It may be your family circumstances, it may be your educational experience, it may be just, I need a pause. I don't want to go 300 miles an hour right now. I want to take me time. I'll be a rock star at what I agree I'm going to deliver. But I think you have to be transparent with your boss and those around you to get you the opportunity that goes back to my opening for your happiness. Because otherwise you can get caught in the hamster wheel of what the companies want and what you think you thought you want. And that changes over time too. And so I think you have to be open and honest to yourself and to your leaders and your support group, your family. I don't know how many times I've heard my family say, Angie is so great at, and she should do blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not what Angie wants to do. Angie may be great at that, but if they want to go get that job, they should go do it, right? So you have to be open with those that are impacting you and be honest.
Yeah, we don't suggest that your first question about benefits be, do you have a maternity policy? When you're in the negotiation phase, all right? But it's certainly, later on a good thing to make sure your expectations, my daughter's a lawyer. She was working in Silicon Valley at one of, attempting to become one of the partners in one of these go-go law firms. And she got married and she got pregnant, but not one, but two. Okay, twins. Okay, she saw this as probably incompatible, ultimately. And so she actually faced this and she changed. She went to work for government for the first 3 years that she had the twins. And it was a much less stressful, much less demanding kind of job. 80 hours a week is not, it's probably a normal work week in those kind of Silicon Valley law firms, okay? So, there's also being, I don't often use the word realistic, okay? It isn't something that's in my vocabulary very much, but I think sometimes face what's necessary, and make the changes. And, now, 5 years later, she's a corporate lawyer with Nike and feeling, really great about it. So that's the trade-offs that you make, and you make them with your, spouse, et cetera. But you do need to face what's happening. So.
Can I just add, I think, I totally support what Angie said. I think being transparent and honest with yourself, I think is what you're saying, Linda, right? And being realistic about what it is that you want, and then being transparent and sharing that with others is really important. I think, I've had moments in my career where I really shied away from saying what I wanted or, saying, no, I don't want to do that, right? Because it was this, especially as a woman, if you say no, then you're not going to get that opportunity in the future, right? So you feel like you have to say yes, yes, yes. The more you say yes, the more they're going to give you. And to what Angie's point, you might find yourself going, I don't like my job anymore because I just kept saying yes and I just kept doing my best. I do think you have to be strategic about those conversations though. And I do encourage you to think about timing, right? And it's not to say that there's a bad time or a good time, but, thinking about, it's kind of like if you're going to talk to something about somebody sensitive or something that, you really want them to listen to you, you got to think about when, who you're talking to is going to be receptive to that conversation. Staging that, but also putting preparation to that conversation, right? You can't just go in and go, yeah, well, I don't like doing that and I don't like doing that. It's like, you need to also have some focus and really have some, I would say, foundation behind, well, this is why, and this is why I'm really good at this. So let's talk about me doing more of this, right? Because this brings me joy and I know I can make an impact here versus, well, I don't like working on that project. I don't want to do that anymore. So, and that could also be something that if you do have a mentor, to talk to your mentor about and kind of rehearse that and think through your talking points and why, you're asking for something versus another. So that's just one thing I want to add.
Yeah, that's true on almost any, influence on the job, and it applies to men just as much as it applies to women. I mean, to really prepare and understand, the goals of the department as well as, your own capacities, and that sort of thing. It's very, very important. Maggie, you have something to add?
I'll just add, for those of you who, if you do end up in academia, I don't know, I've never really been out of it, but operates a little bit differently. It's slow. It doesn't innovate, like the whole entity doesn't innovate. Things don't change as fast as it does in the corporate world. And so, I talk a lot about having these conversations, transparency, but David's question really gave me pause, because I feel like, oh gosh, no, like don't lay everything out all at once. But that cross, I think, between what Angie is saying and what Erin is saying is finding the people that you trust. And one of the things that I learned in this, NCFDD boot camp was find your yes people and find your no people. In other words, if you know that you're thinking about doing something, talk to your people that are going to encourage you and say yes. And you know that maybe this isn't right. Talk to the people that are going to say, no, that's maybe not the right decision for you. Find the people that you can trust, that you can share that level of authenticity with, those levels of self-disclosure. Because I think that's it. I think that's important to I guess not always lay all your cards on the table. I think being your authentic self all of the time is really important. I think being transparent with yourself about your goals and your expectations, what's working, right? Having those moments of reflection is really important. And then finding the right people to share that with that can help you achieve your goals or help you strategize about making the best decision at these different turning points. So I do think academia is like super slow compared to, the real world.
I can tell you, after 11 years of working in Santa Clara University as opposed to Silicon Valley High Tech, I think you're on the right path there. Okay, I also would say, the 3 years, the 5 years when I had 3 kids, I moved out of marketing where I was having to travel all the time, and I took a job in finance where I hardly knew anything, but at least, I could go home at 5 o'clock with a briefcase full of stuff, but I could go home. So I spent that time in a different way in order to be able to accommodate those young years, with the kids and stuff like that. So there's things like that, that you can, you have influence over, and, and use those kinds of things to have a much more manageable life, right? So we're coming up on the end, and none of you have asked any questions live. It's okay. Otherwise, I'm gonna thank the panel. These are all wonderful people. Several of them are my friends, and certainly I appreciate the support I've gotten from all of you over time. So thank you all for everything that you've done today, and for sharing your wisdom, years of wisdom that we have with these wonderful people. So thank you very much.